Three, two, one. We are live with episode number 20 of the No One Told Me Hockey podcast with myself, Jack. And unfortunately, Fletcher could not be here today. He's back in Florida, having a lot of family coming back in town with his friends and stuff. So he was not able to make it on the podcast today. So I'm solo for this first little bit. But in a few minutes, we're going to be joined by an NHL veteran, Kris Versteeg. I'm super pumped to have him on the podcast. He played in 643 games in the NHL with a multitude of teams. But more importantly, he is a two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Chicago Blackhawks, my hometown, which was awesome to have him on the podcast and be able to chat about hockey development, what he's up to now, and kind of how he got into hockey and progressed throughout his years, and kind of get into his youth hockey, junior hockey, professional career, and now kind of what he's up to now. If you guys don't know, he is a co-founder of a company now called Clever.ai, and it is a tool mainly focused on development for a multitude of sports, but I would say hockey right now is obviously him being a former NHL player, that's a big focus for them. And it's a great way for players and parents and coaches to kind of share video between each other really easily, really seamlessly, where a player can send a coach a video clip, they can kind of break it down and give a coaching lesson, send it right back to the player without having to go through any extra steps, go through a different app or, upload it to Google Drive, then they got to download it. It's a really seamless app in terms of that. And then also now they're integrating artificial intelligence to also help with the development process. So if you guys haven't, go check that out. I think it's going to be a great tool for all sports in the future to kind of help coaches and players, communicate with each other and make that coaching, remote coaching a lot an easier effort. So I think it's a great tool, and I think it's going to turn into something really something really good. So without further ado, let's get into the chat with Kris Versteeg. Thanks again for him coming on. It was a blast to talk to him and kind of learn about his hockey development. Okay, so today I'm super pumped about this. I have one of my hometown heroes today, Kris Versteeg, joining me on the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's always good to see a fellow Chicagoan.
Yeah, Chicagoan. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna get right into it. I kind of like to ask this question because I'm usually curious about it with hockey players. So, how did you kind of get into hockey originally?
Well, my dad was probably the biggest part to it. He was a massive Wayne Gretzky fan. He played a little hockey, I think, when he was around 12, 13, 14. He worked on the farm, so he wasn't really allowed to play hockey back in his days growing up. But, he bought me a mini stick, brought me to the rink for the first time, put me on my skates. From there, obviously, my love started to grow, but it was really about him kind of
Yeah.
putting skates on me at 2, 3 years old and the stick in my hand at 2, 3 years old.
Did you have an older brother playing hockey as well? I know you have a younger brother, Mitch.
I have two younger brothers.
Okay.
So yeah, I was pretty much the first one to go through everything, and obviously both brothers followed and played hockey.
Yes, I was going to ask. So since you were the oldest brother, your dad really didn't have that hockey background. How did you kind of, I guess, was there anyone guiding you on how to kind of progress from youth hockey to junior hockey? Was there, or were you kind of just on the fly?
Completely on the fly. Honestly, I look back and, my dad was the main guide. My grandfather as well, my mom's dad.
Mm-hmm.
He was someone who I'd rely to talk on here and there with about, what am I doing? What do I need to do? My grandpa was he never played hockey either, but he was just a guy who loved to watch hockey. And he watched me enough to understand my strengths and weaknesses and where I need to get better. So those two were really my guides, but they weren't hockey people. I don't think I really started to get situated with hockey people until juniors, but I talk about it with kids now because I have academies for young players, or I have my own academy and a young league, and it's crazy the development and the access they have to skills coaches, skating coaches, and everything now. And I just remember what my dad used to tell me to do is watch Wayne Gretzky, watch Yager, And then when you see something you like what they did, go on the road and practice it or go in the
Right.
basement. So I just remember, man, I'd be on the road for hours and hours on end, cold, rain,
Hmm.
didn't matter. And that was kind of where I honed everything I have and my skills was practicing on the street, seeing someone doing it and
Hmm.
emulating it. I think it's probably similar to, a musician who never got music lessons, but could
Right. Right.
listen to music and then start playing the chords based on what they're listening to. And I think that's kind of similar to what I had in hockey was I really tried to watch what guys did and then teach myself it and then ask my dad, hey, is this right? So that
Yeah.
was kind of how I did my development.
So like during your summers and stuff, you were pretty much just on your own, kind of picking up skills and stuff here
I
and
never
there.
played hockey in the summer. No.
Nothing. Did you
Right.
play other sports?
Yeah, so again, I didn't play 1 second of spring hockey. So Devin Setaguchi, I don't know if you know him, eighth overall pick to San Jose,
Hmm.
played a bit in the NHL. He's one of my
Right.
best friends. And Rob Klinkhammer, I didn't have the money to play spring hockey, so I couldn't. So my season generally went from August 1st, I would go to the Sutters camp. It
Hmm.
was a hockey school in Alberta. That'd be my first time on the ice. I'd do a couple camps leading up to the September tryouts, and then I'd be done end of February, start of March, and my skates wouldn't go back on until August again. So that was basically until I was 16 years old and in junior.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and so I look back and I find it funny now, like, how much kids are on the ice now, even my own kids in comparison to what I was. I
It's
mean,
crazy.
right when my hockey season was done, when I was younger, I was really big into soccer.
Okay.
Myself and Rob Klinkhammer, obviously Rob played in the NHL a while and in Russia a
Hmm.
long time and now coaching. And we played soccer till we were 11, 12. And then at 11, 12, we started to transition into roller hockey. And I think
Okay.
roller hockey was massive for our skill development. So
Yeah,
we
I was gonna say, do you think in terms of soccer too, like you were playing that at a young age, like all summer, do you think that helped you kind of get your feet under you as an athlete?
100%. It helped me understand a different game, how to use my feet on the ice. That was always
Hmm.
kind of one of my strong points to my game was being in a battle and being able to use my feet to get pucks and stuff like
Right.
that. So I think soccer always played into that. Even throwing a puck into my feet, I felt like I could always pick it up and get it to my
Yeah.
stick relatively easily, and that's because of the transition from sport to sport. But going back and thinking about those days, I remember thinking about Devin Setaguchi. He was my best friend, but he's also a rival. He was a guy
Hmm.
that he drove me nuts if he was doing better than me, even though he was
Yeah.
my best friend.
Right.
And when I would see him do spring hockey all year long, or spring hockey, and then I'm having to do soccer, it would drive me nuts that I couldn't
Yeah.
play hockey. So that's where I would actually go to the street to be like, okay, if I can't get on the ice right now, I got to do
Right.
certain things to keep up with him. Because if I don't work on this aspect here, I'm going to fall so far behind. I'm going to be screwed.
Yeah, I think it goes overlooked these days in terms of a kid kind of having that creativity on their own and just doing something on their own rather than having to be guided, every single time they do you have a hockey type practice or something. I think that goes overlooked a lot, like the fun of it now, being creative with it.
Agree.
So I think that's cool.
You're 100% right. And when it's kind of funny, I always looked at myself as more, there's street ballers, guys that do tricks on the
Yeah,
street.
yeah, right.
I always looked at myself as a little bit more like that than a hockey
Hmm.
player. I
Right, right.
if,
Yeah,
if you played me on the street, no one would beat me. Like there's
yeah.
no chance, with a ball and a stick and roller
Hmm.
blades. And then it was hard to get into that structure that is ice hockey. So I
Right.
think I had a little too much of the creative and wanting to do
Hmm.
things. That's what got me in trouble, and that's probably why a lot of Hawk fans wanted to kill me a lot of the time. Um,
There's give and take to being creative. I think definitely in doses it can be super beneficial for sure, and I think
yeah,
it's
no,
good to have it.
I agree. Maybe I wanted it too much, but
So do you think like in terms of your creativity too, like roller hockey as well played a big part in that? Because I know roller has a bunch of, creativity involved.
I loved roller hockey. Still to this day is probably some of my best memories ever. I think
Hmm.
the rules in roller hockey are outdated, and that's why the sport can't grow, and that's why it's not getting any better.
Sure.
Um, if they would change the rules a bit to make it more exciting, it could be an unbelievable sport. But
Yeah.
watching pros play in roller, it's like watching paint dry now. It's like,
Right.
2-1 games, 1-0 games, and these guys are so talented, these roller guys, and so skilled. I think
Mm-hmm.
got to change the rules up to make it more exciting.
Yeah.
But back to the development piece, there's really nothing. I don't know if there is anything better that translates to hockey than roller hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, moving the puck differently, because in ice the puck slides, and obviously in roller hockey you got to push the puck a little bit more. So
Right.
I think it works on your hands, like you said, it works on your creativity because the rules are a bit different. Your moves, certain things, you get more chances to score generally at a younger age, not so much at the pro age now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it played a massive piece, and that's something me, Setaguchi, Klinkhammer, this Colton Yellowhorn, we all played on the same team when we were like 16, 17, and
Yeah.
it's something that played a big part, I think, into our development.
Yeah, I think like if you see kids who usually have pretty good hands, like they usually played roller hockey like quite a bit growing up. They seem to have the best hands out of most players if they were playing roller hockey growing up.
Even street hockey, though, too. Like
True,
you didn't even
very true.
necessarily have to be in a roller game, but I tell my own kids now, like, you got to go on the street, you got to play with a tennis ball, a hard ball, a certain puck, because it's going to make you do different things to handle the ball, and that all goes into building your hands and your skill set.
Right, right. Yeah, I feel like you're just so much more aware of what you're doing too. Using different, like you said, different type of objects to stick handle with. Like you just become more aware of kind of what you're doing, a little bit more focused when you're using something that's you're not familiar with. You're a little bit more kind of dialed in on what you're actually doing with your hands and whatnot, rather than kind of just going through the motions.
Yeah,
For
100%.
sure.
Yeah, 100%.
So you weren't playing much, you weren't playing at all spring hockey or summer hockey. So then kind of how did you make that transition from playing AAA into the WHL? How did that kind of process go?
Well, my first ever year of playing AAA was my first year before the WHL.
Okay, yeah.
So,
That's
uh,
how mine was with the North American League. I played 1 year and then I was off to juniors like, what the hell?
yeah, I didn't know what was going on. It hit me like
Right.
a brick. Yeah, so I remember I played Bantam Double A, and in Alberta, like hockey now is single age generally. You play just with your age group.
Yeah. Right.
When I was growing up, you'd always play overage, underage together.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I didn't play my first year of AAA till I was 15. And then I got listed by my hometown team, Lethbridge, which is junior. And then I went to
Mm-hmm.
camp next year as a 16-year-old, not expecting to make it. And I made the team.
Yeah.
So going from my first year AAA and understanding, like I didn't know what structure was at all. Like I was just out there winging it every game,
Right.
playing, trying to score goals, doing what I wanted. And then when
Yeah.
you get into junior, you're given these parameters you can play in, and you can only have so much creativity within those
Yeah.
parameters. And that's where I struggled a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big transition for me, and I could do it because of my compete and my tenacity, but I struggled to create offense within parameters, I felt,
Mm-hmm.
and that was something that took time to transition to.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you think so? That kind of did that like going into that juniors, it kind of fell in your lap almost like you weren't really planning on making that jump yet.
No,
Is that
no,
right?
I actually got cut by a junior A team, which is a league
Oh,
below the
right.
WH.
Right.
So I went to Camrose, or no, I went to what was it called back in the day? Um, Timberwolves. I can't remember. Junior A team out in the mountains near Frank Slide in Alberta. And
Okay.
so I went there as a 16-year-old. I got cut. They said I was too small. I actually had a really good camp. So that was the camp prior to the WHL camp. Showed up at the
Yeah.
WHL camp. Lethbridge listed me just to show up to try out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had equally as good of a camp, but the coach
Mm-hmm.
liked me. And
Wow.
yeah, so Brian Maxwell. And I remember as the camp kept going on, they kept keeping me and I kept playing good. And then I went to
Mm-hmm.
the coach's office one day. I said, "Hey, can you let me go?" I still remember talking to Brian Maxwell. I said, "Hey, can you let me go because I need to go back to midget, and midget tryouts are done now, and I need to know if I'm playing midget or if I'm going to go, what I'm going to do." And
Right.
Brian, he basically said, "Shut the f up, you're going to stay." So I was like,
Wow.
"Yeah." So that
Yeah.
was
Perfect.
I
That's
was like,
cool.
"Okay."
That's nice.
Yeah.
Do you think if you were 16, right? And so were you able to live at your parents' house then? Were
Yeah.
you able to stay home and everything?
Yeah. I live with my
Right.
mom. Yeah.
Okay. So do you think if you were 16 and that team was away from home, do you think you would have been ready for that or been able to handle that? Because I think a lot of kids now are really quick. As soon as they turn 16, they feel like they have to move away to go play juniors or else they're like falling behind in a sense. So do you think you would have been ready for that?
Probably not. Probably not. I know at the time I had about 8 to 10 teams the year prior that wanted to list me because
Hmm.
I never got drafted to the WHL. And my dad talked to me about it, and we're like, well, we might as well just get listed by Lethbridge. It's my
Right.
hometown team. But
Right.
again, not with the expectations I would ever make it as a 16-year-old. So,
Hmm.
I like to think of myself as someone who tries to adapt to situations. So
Yeah.
I think I could have adapted to it, but would I have been ready? There's no chance. I
Right.
mean, it was such a big step, and it's a way bigger step in those days than it is today. Because
Hmm.
today it's more about helping the young guys. So 16-year-olds now, they'll put you in the first line, second line, third line.
Right.
16-year-olds then, we wouldn't even play for weeks on end. And then if we did play, we'd play 6 minutes. Plus, it was the fighting and the physicalness of the game. It was a
Yeah.
much different game. Like there was still two-line pass when I was 16 in junior.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and like I'm going out there on the fourth line playing Derek Bugard and Reed and Shufflemeyer. Like these guys are bona fide killers.
Right. Right.
And that's Pat, and I'm 5'6". You don't have this anymore. So
Yeah.
these are circumstances that 16-year-olds don't have to walk into in junior hockey anymore. Like no one comes to a game anymore scared
Hmm.
to play. Like back then, I'd literally be
Yeah.
medicine hat. Like if my head's not up, it will be removed from my body to do.
Hmm.
So it's different, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I
today,
think I was right in that transition period of like where there was still some kids out there who were looking to like kill kids, and then but then it was like turning into like a skill game where those kids were kind of getting washed out, and now I think it's, I mean, and especially in the junior level, pretty mild in terms of kids like looking to like absolutely kill kids out there, like you said, like back in your like when you were playing.
yeah, it was. I mean, that was 2002. So I mean,
Hmm.
it was. Yeah, I mean, it was full jail rules, like literally,
Yeah.
like at some games. And I mean, that's just how it was. And
Right.
that's what you did. But again, like I was only on the ice 4 days a week as a 15-year-old.
Hmm.
Like 15-year-olds are on the ice minimum 6 days a week.
Oh yeah,
I'm
and in
seven.
the gym, yeah, and in the gym, five
I didn't
minimum.
start
Yeah,
working out till after that year. Like that was my first
yeah,
time ever in the gym was at 15, turning 16.
yeah.
So
Wow, wow.
so it's different times, right? And the
Right.
kids are better prepared now because of sometimes they're over prepared or there's too much that goes into it.
Hmm.
Um, and that's why I think there's always got to be a balance. It's never one way or the other isn't right. I think there's always a balance, right? It's the
Hmm.
truth always lies somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Um, so for me, it's just a different time now. And I think that's why you see kids better prepared at younger ages, especially for the NHL. Like 18 year
Yeah.
olds being able to step in because, again, there's no fear factor of losing your noggin. They
Hmm.
can step in, they can play their game, and they can play against men relatively well because they're not worried about the physical part of the game ending their career, essentially.
Right. Right.
It, it's it's different, and they're better prepared.
Yeah, I feel like they're definitely like developed into that NHL ready like right away. It seems like just because they're training, they're how often they're on the ice developing their skill and stuff from like such a young age. It's just like I feel like they're just ready at, yeah, like you said, at such a younger age. Now, when you went into your first year of juniors and you got like scratched for the first time, or like you kept getting scratched a couple times, did you struggle to handle that? Because I know for a lot of kids that can be a huge change from being in AAA playing every game, and then you go to juniors and you're getting scratched 5 games in a row, and you're like, should I just quit hockey right now?
Yeah, I got scratched a bunch my
Yeah.
16-year-old year. I mean, I probably played 50 games, and there was 70 games in those days, 50,
Mm-hmm.
55 games I might have played. And yeah, I would have been scratched at least 15 times. So thinking back to it, um, I had the mindset like, oh, I'm just lucky to be here. So getting scratched for me wasn't that hard. It was kind of more of an understanding that like I have to work for it in order to earn it.
Mhm.
Again, the mindset now is everything is so handed to guys that when adversity hits, they don't know how to struggle through that adversity.
Right.
So for us, like for me, I always kind of had to deal with the adversity side. So getting scratched, it was more like, I'm probably not playing good enough. Like,
Mhm.
what do I got to do? And so that was my mindset then. Obviously, when I got scratched older, I'd be pissed off. Like when I
Yeah.
got older, oh yeah, like
Yeah.
even in the NHL,
That's the word. Yeah.
I'd be pissed. But in those days, I was more under the mindset of, I'm just lucky to be here. So
Mhm.
it is something where you're like, how do I get back in the lineup, or what do I got to do?
Yeah.
But it wasn't a negative when I was 16, as it was when I was in the NHL and I got scratched.
Yeah. In terms of communication with coaches, right? So say you're, maybe struggling to get in the lineup. Were you a type of guy who would like go talk to the coaches and figure kind of it out with them? Or were you kind of just put your nose down and I'm going to, I'll work my way back into it? Because
Yeah, I would
it can
always
go, I can see it either way. I can see it either way, and it could be a benefit either way.
it can be a benefit either way. When you go talk to the coach, and if you're not playing well or something and you ask for something, you better back it up when you get back in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
That was generally what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ever just want to be the guy because I saw so many good players that they would never go demand it. They would just think putting their head down and grinding would get them back in, and it never did.
Right.
So, you know, that's kind of how I got my first chance in the NHL too. Was I went to the coach's office and I gave it to the AHL coach, who ended up coaching me in the NHL too, and we're still great friends today, Mike Havlin. But I damn
Mm-hmm.
near flipped his desk. He wasn't giving me a chance. And the year before, I was top 10 or top 13 in scoring in the AHL as a rookie. And then I
Mm-hmm.
got traded there, and he wasn't giving me a chance. So I went in his office and I gave it to him. I was like, dude, you got to give me a chance. Like, you're killing me here.
Yeah.
So I was always the guy who would try to ask for answers. And when you don't really get straight up answers from a coach, and they're kind of giving you the runaround, that's where you would. I don't think I'd play my best. I would just rather have always had the coach say, "This is what you need to do," and be very specific in what they ask. But I find a lot of coaches, a lot of the time, they're very vague and they don't give you specific tasks or answers on your role. So that's why guys always become mental midgets in a sense, because it's like
Right.
they're living in limbo.
Right.
They
Right.
don't know their role. They don't know what they need to do to be better.
Yeah, you see that a lot with players, like all like from youth hockey to, junior college, and I'm sure in the pro level too, the same thing where it's like it's tough to get answers out
Yeah.
of coaches in terms of like what do you want me to do? Like in terms of like playing, like as a player. Um, so then for you, when you were kind of in that, because you went from into junior, had that structure, and then into pro. Now, did you kind of find your role or type of player at that point that kind of works for you, or like that allowed you to be successful?
Yeah. My 19-year-old year in junior, I was playing D. So, I didn't really even know what position I was going to be at 19
Hmm.
still. And then at the end of the year, the Bruins had an injury, so they brought me to the AHL and they put me back on forward. And Scott Gordon, who's really the guy who catapulted my career to where it is today, and I owe him a lot. He's the one who put me back on forward and kind of gave me a specific role. He'd be like, "Hey, I need you to work hard, get pucks, get to the net." Really, that's it, right? He was
Yeah.
very specific of what he needed me to do. So I played in the minors at 19. I had a very good finish to the season. And I remember going home that summer being like, okay, I'm 169 pounds. I just played against,
Yeah.
I played against Alex Mogilny. I'm playing against all these guys in the minors. I
Right.
need to put on weight if I'm going to play my style. And I always knew my style was kind of in the corners when I was younger, not as much older, but in the corners, tight areas, protecting pucks, making quick plays, putting the puck on sticks when guys don't know it. So
Hmm.
that was my game, and that's kind of how I built my body around it. And that's what I started to figure out at the end of that 19-year-old year. I trained for it my 20-year-old year, and that's why,
Okay.
going into my 20-year-old year in Providence, man, I had 72 points as a rookie in
Hmm.
the AHL, where I only had 50 points in the WHL the year prior. Again, I was a
Right.
defenseman, but
Right. Right.
it's like I never had 72 points in junior, but I did as a
Yeah.
20-year-old. So I
Yeah.
figured out I also played with David Krejci, so that helped.
That
But
helps for sure.
I realized like I'm just as good as these guys, and I started to think to myself like if I play this type of style, I can be successful because I don't see anyone else really playing this type of style at this level. So just
Yeah.
being tenacious, forechecking, getting pucks back, making good plays, and using my hockey sense in order to do what I need to do. And but that all started with Scott Gordon really giving me a designated role. Like this is
Yeah.
what I need you to do
Right.
do it and you will play. And that's what I did. And I played a shit ton for him.
Yeah, because I know, like for me, like when I was in juniors, I struggled a lot with. I didn't necessarily know what type of player I was because I was a good skater, good passer, but but no one ever told like, and I felt like I needed a bunch of points to be able to go Division One. Like that's what everyone around you is worried about is points, points, points. So I was like, oh, maybe I should probably be worried about that too. And so I didn't have this role defined. And now looking back and in college, I kind of figured it out where it's like I'm a good puck moving defenseman, right? But at the time, I was trying to do it all by myself, score goals, and that's just not who I was. And I think that's where I really got hurt in terms of progression was not knowing, like you said, like not having that defined role.
Yeah. And then if
Um,
you don't get a point, you start to think,
oh,
well,
it's the worst.
then my life's over. And so we have that
Yeah.
kind of with my kids now too. And we coach.
Hmm.
I'll be like, your only task for me today is to back check.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care if you score a goal or get a shot or anything.
Hmm.
Just back check. And every time
Yeah.
you back check, celebrate it like you've scored a goal.
For real though, I mean, I think that needs to be instilled more, especially at the youth and in juniors too, especially I think because I think kids are trying to find their games at those ages, and they probably don't necessarily know what it is. So like
No.
yeah, like that, like gives them good things to work towards, simple things.
Well, yeah, it's a simple thing. And then the other thing too, the offense generally comes because I mean, me as a player, I was always expected to score. And if
Hmm.
you're not scoring, but if a coach would have come and say, "Hey, I just need you to get pucks in the corner and get it out. I don't care if you score a goal for a month. Just
Yeah,
do this specific task for me."
right.
It takes a little pressure off the player and you're not, and you can start to build your role within that. And
Right.
then your game starts to grow because you're not going to bed every night thinking that you're not going to get a scholarship if a point doesn't go on the board, or you're not going
Yeah,
to get playing time if right. So
right.
that's kind of how we approach it with our kids.
Hmm.
Even my own kid, like he'll come
Yeah,
home, my younger one, wailing because he didn't score. I'm like, dude, who cares? Like, but
right.
it's it's innate in every hockey player. Every kid wants
Yeah,
to score and get points, but how do
yeah.
you build them up from doing other simple tasks that make them feel
Hmm.
good too?
Yeah, and I feel like accomplishing those simple tasks, like we were just talking about, that just builds your confidence in your game. Whereas like scoring a goal, like it's not easy to score a goal. So like if you don't score a goal on a night, your confidence is kind of going to dwindle time,
Yeah,
throughout time. Whereas like if you back check or win a corner battle, like those are tasks that can happen multiple times in a game, like fairly consistently, where you can start to build your confidence up rather than scoring a
exactly,
goal. Yeah. So did
exactly.
you ever battle with like in terms of did you ever battle with inconsistency in your game? Like once you found like your type of game, did you
Yeah,
find yourself like losing, getting away from that?
that was probably my biggest falter in my game is my consistency.
Hmm.
When I was at my best in some years, I noticed I'd get into like a bit of a, I'd get first off, I'd get ice time, so it helped me be more consistent.
Hmm.
And I had, whether I had good line mates and stuff like that. Where I felt my inconsistencies would lie would be like sometimes I would play 10 minutes, sometimes I'd play 18 minutes, and it all decided upon how I started a game. So early on in my career for Quenville, I was kind of one of his go-to guys. Not
Hmm.
Kane, Tays, Hosa, Sharp, never them. But like
Right.
after them, I was kind of next up, right? So if
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
going, he was using me. But I was always used at a minimum 16 to 17 minutes generally,
Okay. Right.
and sometimes I play 20. When I came back, I'd be sometimes 7 minutes. So that's where my inconsistencies would lie because if I would get a chance to score and I didn't finish, it would be like cyclical in my head, like all day. Like, man, I only played 7 minutes. If I only play 7 minutes for the next 3 games, I might not even get a chance to score. And I
Yeah.
just ruined that one chance. So I
Right. Right.
felt like that would build in my head, and then it would start to build inconsistencies in my game because instead of doing the little things that add up to goals, I would only be worried
Right.
about the goal because that's what I felt I needed to do in order to play a lot. So that's why, yeah, inconsistency is what killed me, I think, especially later on in my career.
Do you think like so when you were getting like those 7 minute games, do you think you were then trying to like force plays
Yeah.
in
Oh,
terms
yeah. I
like
try to
trying to
play. Yeah.
yeah,
That's what
right.
I mean. Like I would try to not do the little things that made me successful, the little passes that I think I could do as good as anyone on the planet,
Mhm.
like little
Yeah.
bump passes, passes to with guys with speed, seeing guys, in open areas. And instead of making those simple plays that allowed to add up to big plays, I would just go for the home run. And then it would get turned
Right.
over or something bad would happen and then boom, you're playing even less. So that's
Yeah.
I would press for offense a lot harder and it hurt my
Right.
game a lot.
Right. So I'm always curious about this in terms of so like you were drafted later in the draft, like fifth round, right? And then you got guys who get drafted, first round and stuff. And some of those guys don't seem to be able to stick in the NHL. Whereas like a guy like you or some other players who get drafted later and then they end up sticking and having, very successful careers. What do you think is that like deciding factor or what in the game is it what kind of is that the difference in sticking and not sticking?
There's two parts. I mean, there's more than two parts to it, but
Right.
like initially, the first part would be how physically ready are they? So if you're drafting a guy at 17 who has a full beard and chest hair, how much more physical room for
Mhm.
growth does he have?
Right.
I mean, that's just pretty much science, I would assume.
Yeah.
Um, so I think there's a lot of those guys. Now, that's not to say they don't develop into good players because a lot of them
Hmm.
do. But how much physical growth more do they have, and how physically dominant are they at 17?
Yeah.
So how much more physically dominant could they be at 20? Because they've almost physically peaked.
Right. Right.
Um, mentally, they get better at times, but
Hmm.
so I think that's the first piece that goes in, and a lot of those guys sometimes seem to go in the first and second round. So those are the guys that maybe you see have shorter NHL careers, or
Yeah.
maybe they don't make it because they can't get to that next level consistently because again, I think, when I was drafted, I didn't have a hair on my face. I was still look at Connor Bedard. Like he looks like
Yeah. Yeah.
like
15.
he's 15. And same with
Right. Right.
Patrick Kane when he was drafted. He was a boy.
Hmm.
So I didn't start to become a man until I was like 19. Like I didn't start to get like a beard and like become a man and like physically fill out till I was 19, 20, 21. So I think I already had technical skills and a lot of good
Yeah.
skills. And then when my body came in, it all started to come together where all
Okay.
these other players were already men at 16, 17.
Yeah.
So that's the first part. And then the second part, I think a lot of guys just rest on their high horse. So they get drafted
Hmm.
and they think their shit don't stink and other
Hmm.
guys are willing to work a lot harder than them. And that's the second piece to it. Now,
Yeah.
obviously there's more things that come into it. Ice
Sure.
time, development, what they're doing, a lot of other things, but a lot of those two would I would assume be the two biggest stats on why guys do and don't make it.
Do you think too, like in terms of those guys who are drafted really high up in the draft, like they, in terms of hockey, like they might have been the best player their whole life, and
Yeah,
now they go into these locker rooms or like in these games where it's like everyone is at their level, if not, you know, double their skill, way better than them. So it's like the first time they're handling this adversity and they don't know how to
hard.
handle it.
I
Right?
think
It's got to be really hard.
I think that's a massive piece of it. They've always been the guy. And again, Connor McDavid and some guys like the Bedards and these guys are a bit of the exception. But think of Nico
Yeah.
Hischier. Like he's a first
Right.
overall pick, and he's not even the top three player on his team. He's probably what
Right.
fourth,
Right.
fifth, best, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
the first overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like most drafts, you don't get Connor Bedard or Connor McDavid. You get
Yeah.
really, really good hockey players,
Mm-hmm.
but these guys do come into the room now and they look at a guy that's just as fast as them, just as strong, can shoot just as hard. And the thing that always separates the best from the best is the brain at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
How fast they can process plays, how consistent they can be at processing those plays, and how many times they're going to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And that's what allows them to be the best. It has
Yeah.
nothing to do, speed and skating and all that is big, but if you can't
Mm-hmm.
process plays at fast, that's what the greats do, and they do it at a higher clip than anyone else.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible watching McDavid right now fly around the ice these last couple of years. I can't even fathom like trying to defend him. It's got to
It's
be
wild.
insane.
I remember I had to shadow him one game when I was with Calgary, and I was in. I should have been in the penalty box the whole game. They didn't call it.
Yeah,
And also think about that game last night, the Oiler game. What a
yeah.
travesty to the game of hockey that they put McDavid on 10 o'clock Eastern time on a
I don't
Sunday.
I
Sunday.
don't get it. I don't understand why like exactly why they're putting these games so late. Yeah,
I can't
especially on a
watch it.
Sunday. Yeah,
You
I
can't
know.
watch it. My kids can't
No.
watch it. No one can watch it. It's a travesty to the game what they're doing, putting these games at these times, and
Mm-hmm.
they're killing the markets that are trying to watch these kids and these
Yeah.
players. And oh, it's yeah,
Yeah,
that,
you're up till 1 a.m. if you're on if you're on Eastern time, you're up till trying 1 a.m. to watch a hockey game, and it's like you got work in the morning. Like you're probably not watching that game. You're
it started
watching
at
the
eight
highlights tomorrow.
Mountain Time.
I
Eight
know.
Mountain.
Yeah, right.
So
I
it was
saw that
eight
because I'm
o'clock.
in Mountain Time. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's like, what the heck? This is so late.
yeah, it was
Yeah, that
stupid
is crazy. Best player in the world, and they got him on at 8
all the
Mountain
time though.
Time, which is
They don't
crazy.
change it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's so crazy. So, what do you think, like in terms of your career? What do you think, like in terms of progression? Like you had the most progression in like maybe a 2-3 year span. When do you think that happened?
Yeah, 19, 20, 21, 22. So I basically went from, 165 pounds playing defense in Red Deer, working at Sport Check in the off season, to, the next year finishing top 13 in scoring, top 2 or 3 in rookie scoring
Mm-hmm.
in the AHL, and then within a year being up for rookie of the year in the NHL.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
like it was like a 3 months, or it was a 3 year whirlwind. I was up
Mm-hmm.
for rookie of the year in the NHL. Had 20 goals, and never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be in the NHL, let alone doing that. So
Right.
that 3 years of progression was a rocket ship, basically.
And what did your summer look like in terms of skating? Training, going to trainers and stuff like that at that time during those years.
Yeah, that so Trevor Hardy was my trainer when I was 15, and he still tells a story of like me walking into the gym, 135 pounds, 130 pounds,
Mm-hmm.
like a skid, basically came in on my
Right.
skateboard. Um, Seriously, yeah, like legit. Um,
That's unreal.
yeah, and my biggest leaps though, again at 19 to 20, I remember I came back and we started to work on the mental side of my game. So like
Mm-hmm.
skating, I'd be on the ice 4 days a week, working on my skills, certain particular parts to my game. I'd be in the gym 6 days a week.
Okay. Of
Probably be at the bar a couple times a week too, but like
course.
I'd be at the yeah 1 or 2 times a week. But
Yeah.
we, I'd be at the gym 6 days a week, and we'd be training to fail essentially every day. Like
Mm-hmm.
literally, you don't train like that anymore, and that's probably why
Right.
my body has nothing left to give. But it was rigorous, it was hard, but where the development really started to happen is where me and Trevor would get together once a week. I would go to his house and I'd write down my goals of what I wanted to do. So make the AHL, finish, lead the team in scoring. Like these were crazy lofty goals. Like no one even know who I was, right? So
Right.
think of crazy lofty goals, write them down, and then start to do stuff that makes your mind believe in it. And that's what we started to do. Was this? You'd like hold your arm out, and you'd push it down, and if it'd fall, it meant you didn't believe it, and if you'd hold it, it meant you believe. It sounds like
Yeah.
voodoo stuff, and we did it every week, every week of the summer for about 3.5, 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of the summer, you couldn't even move my arm. It was like everything I had a belief in,
Right.
like my mind started to connect to my muscle, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes total sense.
And you couldn't even move my arm. And so I had this started to build this sense of belief in myself that I could accomplish these goals. And then when I started to get on the ice and doing it, I was like, holy shit. And then each summer I would come back and I would sit down with Trevor and we'd rewrite
Mm-hmm.
new goals. So the next year would be like to make the NHL, to be
Yeah.
up for rookie of the year. And I remember before the summer before I was up for Rookie of the Year, I only played 12 or 13 NHL games the year before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going into the whole summer, I'd say, I'm going to be up for Rookie of the Year. I'm going to be up for Rookie of the Year. And they try to push my arm down. And I had this crazy belief. The last skate in Alberta, I was leaving for Chicago, and I wasn't even supposed to make the Hawks that year. They had Jack
Mm-hmm.
Skilling, Troy Brower, Boland, all
Right.
these other guys, right?
Yeah.
And I remember before I left, I went to Rob Klinkhammer, one of my best friends. I said, "Hey, I'm going to be up for Rookie of the Year in the NHL this year." And he goes, "Dude, you're not even going to make the team, right?" And
So crazy.
yeah, and I told all the guys, I'm like, "I'm going to be up for Rookie of the Year. Next time you see me, I'll be up for Rookie of the Year." It
Yeah.
was crazy, and like they're shit talking me, saying I'm out of my mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I ended up making the team, and I was up for Rookie of the Year. It was crazy, and we always tell that story, like.
Yeah.
But it was starting to, I was starting to build that sense of belief in myself.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all because of Trevor. Trevor was the guy who helped me with that side of my game, physical and mental. And I think, I mean, without the mental side and connecting the two, I don't know if I could have ever done it.
Yeah. Did you guys do any other mental training in terms of like, not situational, but like in terms of like if you're struggling with certain things, or was it kind of just building that belief in yourself of like
So
I can do these things?
yeah, with Trevor, so he was more about building the belief in myself and going through each
Mm-hmm.
goal and task and starting to make your mind understand that you can accomplish that goal.
Yeah.
The second one was Dr. Jim with the Hawks. He would talk to you about more of your personal stuff and how you're going to
Okay.
let things go. So that side was amazing too. You'd talk to him about what you can do to, you know, if you don't score for 3 games, how are you going to figure out to let it go? So that side for me was massive too, and helping me understand how to let things go and just play hockey. So there's two.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back, there was 2, 3 different people, even my own dad, that would help me with the mental side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so did your dad play like a big role in helping you get through or talk through some situations that you were going through? Because I know me and my dad were the same way with like communication about hockey, like nonstop,
Yeah,
kind of working through things.
yeah. So I'd always talk to my dad and ask him what he thought, what he thinks, and if anyone knows Roy, he doesn't hold back. Um, and
That's good though. That's good.
yeah, he gave it to me straight. Like I remember one
Mhm.
time I said I wasn't getting played, and he's like, "Well, just quit then and come sell tractors with me." you know? So he was never anyone that held back, and he would give it to me straight. He's like, "Yeah, you're not having fun. You're throwing pucks away. You're doing this, this, and that, and whatever. Go have fun." So we always had very
Yeah.
pointed conversations, me and him.
Hmm.
Sometimes I
Right.
wouldn't talk to him for a week or two because I'd be pissed at how he would say it to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Absolutely.
like I remember not talking to him for weeks at times because I was so mad at him. Because I'd
Hmm.
be like, "Dude, you got to be on my side," and he'd never, right? He'd
Did
always,
he ever? Did he ever give you any advice? Was he giving you advice when you were playing in the NHL and stuff too,
"Yep,
where you were still get into it with him about
oh yeah."
things?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'd call him after games. I'd be like, "What'd you see?" And he'd be like, "Well, this, or that." And I'd be like, "Yeah, And then sometimes I'm like, "What do you think about this? Why am I not playing here?" And he'd be like, "Well, it's because you're not doing this." I'm like, basically, F you. And then,
Right. Right.
I mean, pretty much right up until the end, I would always talk to him about
Yeah.
games.
That's cool. That's cool. Because yeah, I mean, they definitely know you the best. They have your best interest. You. I don't know the term. They have the best interest for you.
Well, they watch
They
you
care.
so close.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they care about you the most. So they're gonna give it to you straight. Right. They're not like looking out for themselves in a sense, like maybe some other people are or whatnot in
Yeah.
terms of coaching and stuff.
And my old man's not delusional.
Hmm.
That's the biggest part you run in with parents now is how delusional they can be in
Yeah.
on their children's development and where they're at. That's where, as a parent, that's the last thing you want to do is tell your kid they're the best or they're so great and how could they ever be in this situation. Even when I look
Hmm.
at my own kids, like
Yeah.
if my wife asks me, I'm like, my kid can't do this, he can't do that, he doesn't do this. Again, he does these things pretty good, but do
Yeah.
you want to be so delusional that you're telling them that they're so great and there's never going to be an adversity or there's nothing they're ever going to work on? Like
Right.
that's the thing with my dad, and I think most dads that have good hockey players that I find is they're They understand their child's weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
They understand mentally their weaknesses and their strengths, and they also give it to them straight. And
Yeah.
that's where I think you could hurt your athlete a lot, is when you're just telling them that it's just always, you know, they're always the best and things are
Yeah.
great, right?
Yeah. So are you coaching right now, or are you kind of in the stands?
No, I coach.
Okay. It's like the biggest thing that you've learned from coaching versus, being on the ice?
Oh man,
Because
um,
it's big difference. Yeah.
it's a huge. I love it. It's a huge difference. I know it. Sometimes I can't go on the bench with my own kids, so I have a great assistant coach. I can't even
Yeah.
talk to my kids. Like, I'll try to say something to them on the bench, and they get angry at me and don't listen. So
Mm-hmm.
I always have to have the other coaches talk to my children.
Yeah.
That's hard because I remember with my dad, when he'd coach me, when he'd tell me to do something, I'd almost not do it to piss him off more. And
Right.
sometimes
Right.
I can find my own kids doing that, and I'm like, karma's a bitch, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big
So,
time.
yeah. So, like, there is a balance you need to have, especially with your kids and coaching kids. You need to have another coach on the bench that talks to your children as a coach.
Mm.
I think you have to have a way of making things fun for them, but also keeping it serious. Not so much, again, more for the higher end athlete, the
Yeah.
athletes that want more at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
That's not everyone, and some kids develop into that. But I think for me as a coach, learning, there is a balance, and um, how to instill creativity, but with also understanding that there's going to be a day that structure comes, and they're going to need to learn with inside that too. So how to figure out the balance to teach kids at a young age to understand the situations, right? I guess.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those are the things I'm learning the most.
So then once you retired from pro hockey, did you have a plan on what you were gonna do after? Or were you kind of gonna take some time or
When I was still playing in Europe, a lot of, Ryan Leslie actually from the Flames asked me to do some broadcasting. So I had kind of thought about trying it to see if it would be something I'd like to do in
Mhm.
retirement. So I did do that. I did do a couple games for the Flames. I was on Sportsnet. Then COVID happened, and around that time, my kids were starting to come age of, skating. So I transitioned into more coaching my kids, and
Yeah.
then from there, I've liked it, and I ended up help founding a league now for U7, U8, U9 hockey players in Ontario. More of a competitive landscape because Hockey Canada doesn't allow a competitive landscape for kids until U10. So
Uh-huh.
our league is more of a competitive league for that age that will do that. And yeah, I kind of found a little bit of a passion with that. And then obviously Clever, my technology video
Mhm.
coaching kind of took off, and I retired too. But while I was playing, I actually thought I'd be more on the broadcasting side, and I obviously found myself more now on the coaching side, especially in the youth angle right at the
Yeah.
moment. Maybe one day I'd like to coach in the pros,
Mhm.
coach NHL. I mean, I think I could coach in the NHL for sure,
Mhm.
and maybe I'll do that one day. But I'd
Yeah.
like to coach my kids first. I want to have these moments and memories. I don't want to
Right.
do it too
Right.
soon.
So how did you get into developing that league for the competitive
Yeah.
youth
Well, it's not.
hockey?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I was part of a minor hockey organization, and um, just the way the current model is very hard for the better players to develop. And
Mhm.
it's, the model Hockey Canada has is great for what they try to do for the kids that don't want to be super competitive, just like the USA
Mhm.
hockey model. But
Right.
some kids want more and some want to do more. And it's also not fair if all the best players have the puck on the ice all the day and the lower ones don't.
Sure.
And also, I don't understand why they can't keep score. Like, what are we
So dumb.
teaching? What
Right.
are we teaching athletes if they can't keep score?
Yeah.
Again, common sense. You don't want blowouts. You don't want kids getting discouraged. You don't want any of that.
Mhm.
You have to cultivate an atmosphere that allows them, I believe, to win, to lose, to do everything.
Yeah, it's important.
Right.
It's
It,
important.
it's super important. So I was a part of it, and I was like, screw it, I'm leaving. Also, there's hockey dads in jeans teaching my kid how to shoot. And I was like, this is absurd. Like,
Yeah.
and I wasn't really doing it yet. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I have to coach.
Right.
So then I started to coach. More parents asked me to do a little bit more. I started to develop 10 players in the Durham area and Whitby. And
Hmm.
then, other teams started to see what we were doing, our parents. So other developers started to do kind of what I was doing.
Yeah.
And basically, that's just how the league founded. And,
Okay.
it's kind of crazy now. Minor hockey organizations block us from getting ice. So they buy up all the ice. They don't even use it, but they use
Oh,
registration fees to block the ice from us.
so
So,
crazy.
yeah, it's crazy. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But
Right. Right.
that's our biggest crutch, right? Is infrastructure. It's ice
Hmm.
because they block ice. They don't, and there's tons of ice not used, and they act like there's no ice. But you drive by rinks all over here, and they're empty at times
Yeah.
because it's blocked ice by the organization paid by registration fees. So, but again, it was just a bunch of people that realized that private development was helping a lot of the top players. Now, that's not to say the players that go to the Hockey Canada model won't ever develop there.
Right. Hmm.
But currently at that state these kids are at, they wanted more. They wanted to play
Hmm.
more competitive games. They wanted to play with better players.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. And
Right.
so it seemed like it was reciprocal across the province that more people wanted to do this.
Hmm.
And that's how we really set it up. And me and my partner Jamie Stone and Laura Pendley and Payam Zarian, we founded the KSL, the Clever Super League, and it's a showcase league that really puts a heavy emphasis on development. So you play a showcase every 6 weeks where you play your league games, and in between the league games, those 6 weeks, you can play exhibitions or go do other
Okay.
tournaments and such.
Okay. Yeah.
But we want heavily focused on skating skills and development in those 6 weeks
Right.
leading
Right.
up to each showcase. And we don't want kids traveling on Wednesdays 2 hours to go play a random league game.
Right.
So
Right.
that's kind of where we set up this model. And like I said, we got teams from the US now in
Oh,
Buffalo
wow.
League,
Yeah.
Niagara. So all across Ontario, from basically Belleville till Niagara, we got teams.
Okay.
And at the U7, U8, U9 level. And yeah, it's kind of just been crazy how fast it grew, to be honest.
And so how many practices a week are you having? Is each team
So
different, I'm assuming, or
each team's different. We ask that you do 3 practices minimum a week,
Mhm.
and my teams do 4.
Okay.
So yeah, we do 4 practices, or four, usually 3 practices in a game. This past year was 3 practices, 1 game.
Okay. And
And if you can't get a game, it's 4 practices.
okay, gotcha. And you guys are just mainly focusing on development of the players and
Yeah.
kind of hammering in on those. That's
Yeah,
cool.
skills, skating, in-game and out, in-game IQ, shooting, compete, whatever it
Yeah.
may be.
Yeah, cool. So do you ever find it tough now? Because I struggle with this now. Because like I told you earlier, I graduated from college and then I kind of jumped into the real world, and I don't have that like competitive thing anymore that's driving me. So did you struggle with that at all in terms of like finding something that keeps you competitive? And because I struggle with it a lot, and I think a lot of athletes do.
Yeah, you miss the juice, right? You miss that kind of
Yeah.
high you get from scoring a goal or winning a game or
Right.
being with your buddies and celebrating together. You miss that.
Mm-hmm.
You miss that juice. Again, when I retired, I founded Clever, the technology platform,
Yep.
and that's been an amazing experience helping, you know, athletes streamline video sharing, athletes,
Mm-hmm.
parents, and coaches. But, you still miss that being on a bench and celebrating and all that. And when I started to coach my kids and we'd get to tournaments, you started to feel that again. Like, oh, we just won a game, or this kid just scored a big goal, or you taught this kid this skill and he executed it,
Mm-hmm.
and it made for a big moment for this game. So
Yeah.
that's where you start to get that excitement again. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
I was like, start to think, I'm like, oh, maybe I always never thought of myself as a guy who'd want to coach pro, but after coaching kids and doing this, who's to say I don't want to one day? Because I feel like I will now, because
Yeah.
it's like that's what gives you that fire is being a part of these high intense atmospheres. Like think about it. Like the anxiety is what you live for before
Yeah.
a game,
Yeah.
where you're
Exactly.
just,
Yeah.
am I going to win? Am I going to lose? Is
Right.
what's going to happen? Like that's the
Hell yeah.
part I miss the most of hockey is
Mhm.
like going to a big game and being so fired up, like
It's
anxious,
unreal.
like, oh my
Right.
gosh, it's and then if something big happens in that game, it's an explosion, right? You're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
so I mean, you get it still with my kids. I get it. You
Hmm.
get to a big game, a big tournament, and you're anxious. You're like, oh my gosh, this team's really good. We got to be prepared. We
Right.
got to do.
Right.
And then the kids score a big goal, and you're so excited for them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
That's
what you
cool.
miss the most.
Cool. Cool. So then, yeah. So I want to get into clever AI. So I'll just let the listeners know, for people who don't know, Kris has a company now called Clever AI that he founded with, I believe, did you found it with your brothers?
Yeah, and Josh McNevin, coach of the Kelowna Rockets.
Okay. So then, yeah, we're going to get into that now about kind of how you founded it. So, yeah, how did you guys come about kind of finding that company and stuff? Founding it?
Yeah, so at the end of my career, my agent and he was trying to get me to look at some video of some of his players and teach, and also other parents. They basically wanted to send me a video or a couple of videos or look at game clips and
Yeah.
teach them. And then COVID did start to happen around that time,
Mm-hmm.
but there was just no video sharing that allowed me to get a clip, teach it, and share it back on one platform.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the problem we kept running into. It was like a really cumbersome process. Basically, to send me a video, I'd then have to get onto Zoom with you and teach it.
Yeah.
And that would take time. Or if I'd have to do it without you around, I'd have to put it into like Coach's Eye when that was around, or pull it out, or
Yeah.
screen record it, put it into a Dropbox, do whatever.
Right.
And that process could take an hour or two, hour and a
Mm-hmm.
half, just to teach one clip.
Right.
So I remember me, my brothers, and Josh were like, there's got to be a better way to streamline video sharing all on one platform. And that's what Clever is you could literally send me a clip of you shooting a puck in the driveway and I could send it back to you in a minute, literally a
Wow.
talk, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
this is what I
Yeah.
do, give you a couple tips and boom. So we've streamlined video sharing on Clever. And rather than, again, having to put it into one coaching app, put it into a G drive,
Yeah. Yeah.
send it through text message. We've now built the platform that allows you to do everything in Clever,
Okay.
uh, phone or iPad.
Right.
And that's what we've done. And kind of from there, we've built the AI side. We have skeleton tech now where you can start to see the joint angles of players. You can actually manually manipulate the skeleton, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
We also have other speed tracking features and a lot of other things coming out very soon. And you're going to be able to challenge other people.
Oh,
So
that's
it's going to
cool.
be pretty cool. Yeah. So, but the video sharing problem is where it started.
Yeah.
And that's what we no one does even close to us.
Right.
And that's what we do great. And you have groups there. You could have team groups.
Mm.
You could have a group with just one player too, and that's private to you and that player. I also use groups for recruiting for the academy. So if a player wants to play in the academy before tryouts, the parents will have to send practice and game footage of that player. So now you have video in one centralized area in the
Yeah.
groups, and Clever. So actually recruitment for academies for video sharing to help the tryout process has been really big too.
Oh wow, that's cool. Yeah, because I've dealt with that in terms of video sharing myself, not necessarily for like sending clips to other people, but just trying to get them from my computer to my phone is like a pain. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like sharing video is not easy
No,
across different people and devices. So yeah, that's really cool. Have you guys, what do you think like your biggest challenge has been in terms of developing it or marketing it or whatever?
marketing.
Marketing.
Marketing's the hardest part. We don't have a marketing. We don't have any really money allocated to marketing at the moment.
Yeah.
And then developing is always a challenge because you always want to develop faster, but you can only do so much, and money only goes so far. And
Yeah.
but that piece of the development side would be a challenge. And yeah, always back to marketing and then tutorials. Like we need really good tutorials on how to use Clever because once you use it, it's so easy, and people are
Yeah.
like, "Wow, this is crazy fast and easy to use." That we just that's what we need. We need good tutorials. We need good marketing now, and I
Yeah.
think that could really help push Clever to where it needs to go.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that I think that is a huge, and especially because you can get, someone doesn't necessarily have to be in your area to get, good coaching, right? You can
No,
get someone from across the world and get helpful feedback, pretty, fairly quickly. So I think that's
Yeah,
a huge tool.
yeah, we got figure skaters that, you know, they have athletes in Korea, South Korea,
Right.
and they live in Colorado, and
Mhm.
they teach athletes daily
Yeah.
on Clever. And they'll send them a trick or something on the ice for figure skating. They send it, they teach it, they send it back within minutes.
Boom. Yeah, that's cool. So then I guess it's for all sports, right? It's not just primarily focused on hockey, right?
9 sports currently at the moment and fitness, but
And
hockey is
fitness.
our main sport.
Yeah.
Baseball, a lot of baseball teams using it now, and we also have digital whiteboards too. So for hockey, baseball, soccer, and basketball, when you do lesson plans, a lot of teams do it on desktop or they do it on paper.
Right.
Now all you can do is go into Clever and you can send it as a video file. So you can pull up a hockey whiteboard. You could hit record. You could start drawing all your lesson plan. Hey, we're going to do this drill first, this drill second. We're going to do this third. And then you could hit stop, save, and you could send that 1, 2, 3 minute video to your team, your players, your coaches, whatever it may be. And so instead of seeing like a paper with X's and O's everywhere and writing on the side, you actually have a coach talking over and drawing on a whiteboard. So it's very interactive, and it helps players and coaches and parents and everyone understand what's happening way better. So that's actually a massive feature we use too, is the digital whiteboard that's in our coach mode.
That's cool. That's cool. Well, Kris, that is all I have for you. I don't know if you got anything for me, but I appreciate you coming on here. I think it's been super helpful. I mean, like, we focus on a lot of hockey development. I think you dove into it, a good job of it, did a great job of explaining, your experiences, your career, kind of what you're doing now, which is in the hockey development as well. So it's been an honor to have you on. Huge fan, and I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Talk to you later. See ya.
Yeah, take care.
All right, so that wraps up episode number 20 of the No One Told Me Hockey podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, learned a lot, were able to take some things away from his, youth development, junior development, his professional career, and kind of what he's doing now with his kids and coaching, and then, be able to use clever.ai. So if you guys haven't, go check clever.ai out. And that wraps up episode number 20 of the No One Told Me Hockey podcast. See you guys next week.